Hello, you're watching another fat bearded man talking about records. Or you, my friends, you can call me Headley. It's been a while since I've done one of these. I've only done 2 so far. And already I'm off the monthly schedule. Originally I didn't really want to saturate the market. I mean, they do say about me that I'm a very difficult man to avoid, but well worth the effort. So anyway, eventually I've got round to doing this. It's been quite hot over here. You know, in the UK, you know, the temperatures have been ridiculous. So I've not really been fancying doing anything like this. So I haven't. So anyway, I thought I'd continue with this. Thank you for all the people who have watched my previous 2 videos. It's great to get some of the feedback from you guys, some of the subscribers, and all of the people that are writing comments. It's nice to sort of build a kind of community and discuss these things, especially when I'm discussing country music that perhaps isn't everyone's cup of tea. But it's great that you're actually mucking in and kind of trying to enjoy this stuff like I do. Anyway, so this is the 3rd one of these, my trilogy. I'm probably not going to do another one of these for a while. I might cut down the length. I'm not quite sure how long I'm planning to do these for. So anyway, shall I start? I've got 10 records to show you. So without further ado, let's get on with it. Okay, first record here is Alex Campbell and Olabelle and the New River Boys, Travel On. This is from 1965 originally, but it says on here 1975, and this is on the Gusto label. It says Star Day on the record itself. I love the cover. I love the high fidelity bit at the bottom. That's my favourite bit about this. And it's straight ahead bluegrass, really. Most of the tracks are written by them. Travel On, of course, is a bit of a bluegrass standard. Alex Campbell shouldn't be mistaken for Alex Campbell, the Scottish folk singer, father of Ali Campbell from UB40. And Olabelle with his sister, and they're from North Carolina, I understand. During the war, Alex Campbell served in the army, and while he was over in Germany, in the same company was a guy called, who would go on to be called Grandpa Jones, who was a kind of a big hit. He pretended to be like an old man and do folk and bluegrass tunes. Anyway, they after the Germans were defeated, there were a lot of American servicemen there, and so they formed a band, Grandpa Jones and the Munich Mountaineers. And they did shows in beer halls, and they were on the radio for the troops out there. Anyway, after the war they came back, and they moved up to Pennsylvania, somewhere around there, I think, and eventually got a job at the Sunset Fair, which was a country fair which had country music, and they were the opening act for 26 years, I think, until he died in 2013. There's a really nice thing I found actually from the Sunset Park in Pennsylvania, and it says here, this was a note backstage, and it says, "Special notice to all entertainers: no profanity, not even hell or damn, allowed on this stage or any show. Keep your shows clean, no smut. Please refrain from cussing backstage, as microphone is always open. Thank you." Excuse the accent, that was terrible, I'm so sorry. Anyway, so that's a bit of bluegrass there for you. Nice album. Completely the other end, if that's kind of traditional, this is probably the most untraditional country you can get. This is Honky Tonking by the Mekons. This is on the Sin Records label from 1987. The label, actually, I don't know if you can see it. Can you see it there? Sin Records. Like a pastiche of the Sun Records label. I really like that. Anyway, this the Mekons were one of the early punk bands from Britain. They formed in 1977. In fact, they are the only one of the first group of punk bands to still actually be going. They formed in Leeds, which is where I live, and they were at art school together at the University of Leeds. They're in the same class as the Gang of Four, the post-punk outfit, again from Leeds. And in fact, the first album that the Mekons recorded, they had to borrow the Gang of Four's equipment to record it. Anyway, they did kind of, they were almost post-punk before punk really, or sort of in between. It started out as post-punk. They weren't like a lot of the punk bands in 1977. And as they moved on into the 80s, they started putting country music and English folk music into their repertoire. I should say, actually, I forgot to say that the Mekons, for you in the States, you probably don't know what the Mekon is. The Mekon was from a comic called The Eagle, and the Mekon was the arch nemesis of Dan Dare, Pilot of the Future. And he was the leader of the Treens, a kind of green alien. I think they were from Venus, so they named themselves after him. So this kind of blends kind of punk sensibilities with country music. We've got what have we got on here? We've got Sleepless Nights. What was the other one? There's another one on here. I think that's. Oh no, I thought there was another track that was like a cover version. But anyway, it's really sort of blending the punk and the country, not like a cowpunk stuff. It's much more relaxed than that. But they're a great band. I've seen John Langford, who you might know from various projects. He is in a band called the Waco Brothers, and he moved to Chicago, and they're on the Bloodshot Records label, which is how I kind of came across him. He does wonderful artwork. You might have seen some of his artwork. He's done sort of album covers and things like that. I think there was certainly a re-release of some Hank Williams stuff with a cover by him. I'll see if I can find it and post it somewhere. So anyway, the Mekons, great sort of punk country. Now, I suddenly realised that I didn't have any of this artist on vinyl, and that is Loretta Lynn. Now, Loretta Lynn. This is a box set I managed to find on eBay. It's called The Lady, the Legend, and it's on the World Communications Inc. label, which means it was probably some kind of send-off infomercial thing. And it was from sort of 87 or something like that, I think. And it's got all the hits on it. Now, I understand actually, if you look at that, that is where she grew up. That's the house that she was born in, probably. She's actually the older sister of Crystal Gale. Do I mean Crystal Gale? Yes, I do mean Crystal Gale. Anyway, so she was an interesting figure in country music. She was the biggest name, and certainly the female country artist in the sort of the 70s and into the 80s. Famous for Coal Miner's Daughter, which was her autobiography, which eventually got turned into a film with Sissy Spacek playing her. Which is an interesting character because she would never call herself feminist or progressive in that way, but she was a blue collar person. Her dad worked down the mines, and that was how she grew up. Totally working class, blue collar. And she was looking at the way that women were being treated. And we've got tracks on here, like the famous one was The Pill, which was all about contraception, about how women can take control of their lives for once. Other sort of thing, other tracks, Rated X, which is all about the inequalities between men and women. And many of the songs actually were refused playing on country radio. She's still going. She had an album released this year that was produced by John Carter Cash, Johnny Cash's son. And I was going to say a couple of years ago, but I understand it's like 2004. She had an album called Van Leer Rose, which was kind of produced by Jack White of the White Stripes, and that, if you haven't listened to it, is a great album. But you can't go wrong with her straight ahead country, no messing around kind of stuff. It's that man again, Johnny Cash. Can't go wrong with Johnny Cash. Well, maybe you can, but you certainly can't go wrong with Johnny Cash with this album. This is called Silver, and it was released in 1979. And this is interesting album for many reasons. First of all, it's produced by Brian Aherne, who at the time was married to Emmylou Harris. She's not on here, which is a bit of a surprise. It has tracks by all kinds of different people. I think who have we got? Oh, I can't say here. Yeah, lots of guests. Ricky Skaggs. I think who else have we got? Ricky Skaggs. Marshall Grant. Now Marshall Grant. This was the last album of Johnny Cash's that Marshall Grant, who was from the original Tennessee 2, would perform on. After this, it all ended up sort of acrimoniously with him suing Johnny Cash for unpaid pay and pension stuff and all kinds of stuff like that. So this is the last album, and it's an interesting sounding album. It's kind of the first kind of digital production, and Brian Aherne is doing all kinds of interesting stuff. A lot of people don't like it. The AllMusic review is terrible, and it's completely wrong. It sounds brilliant. Yeah, it's a bit weird, it's a bit odd, but I think this is the last essential Johnny Cash album until you get to the Rick Rubin American recording stuff. So if you haven't listened to it, get out there. Really interesting stuff. Gene Shepard. This is called Songs of a Love Affair. Originally on Capitol Records from 1956, but this is on the Stetson label. I'm a little bit obsessed by Stetson. They are a British reprint label, and I love the kind of records that they are re-releasing. They're in the 80s, so there's not much information about when these were actually released. So anyway, so this is Gene Shepard was a straight-ahead honky-tonk performer, and in fact later on in her career, when the Nashville sound kind of kicked off, she refused resolutely to join in and stayed honky-tonk, much to the detriment to her album sales. Anyway, this album is an album that's actually arguably the first country music concept album. It's about a woman with her marriage being torn apart by an affair, and each of the songs, it says on the back, I'll just start. The story begins with the changing moods and thoughts of a girl who tries to forget after a passing love affair. Her deep sense of loss, her anger and pride recall the time, the bitter discovery of her lover and another girl as shadows on the wall. So it kind of tells a story all the way through, and lovely sounding album, beautiful kind of straight ahead honky tonk, like I said. If you don't like all the strings and things, this doesn't have it. In fact, later on in her career, she served as the president, Gene Shepard that is, she served as the president of, let me get this right, the Association of Country Entertainers, which was an organisation that started to try and keep country music pure. After 1974, Olivia Newton-John won the Country Music Association's Vocalist of the Year. And so much like when Charlie Rich burnt the envelope with John Denver's name in it, it's very much a similar kind of thing. So anyway, if you don't like strings and things like that and the Nashville sound, this is a lovely album from 1956. Tex Williams, Feeling Country. Now this was on Spin Records from 1979. This here is Tex Williams, you see him there? Interesting looking guy. You can't really see from the picture there, but he was 4'6". He had a malformation of his spine, so he didn't grow any taller than 4'6". Born in Texas, his father disowned him because of his back problems, and he had to kind of make his own way, and he made his way over to Britain, and he had a love of country music, and sort of introduced country music to the pubs and clubs of West London. He was a well-known figure. He was never seen out of his rhinestone suit and wearing his Stetson, and in fact he would often turn up on stage either on a horse or with a horse. It became part of his act. So a real big sort of figure in the clubs of London in the 60s. Or that's not true. Otherwise, he is Alan Withers, and he was born in Hackney, and he lived a kind of a strange life, pretending to be this Texan country music star. I love the fact that, and still to this day, there are people that swear he was from Texas. He had the accent, he had everything, and it's rather sad. He did actually play at the Grand Ole Opry. He was a guest of Hank Snow, and he recorded an album, not this one. This is recorded in, let me finish the sentence. He recorded an album in Nashville. This one's not, this one's recorded in Ireland. That's Big Tom Studios. He, unfortunately, later in his life, he got a throat infection or something wrong with his voice, and he lost his voice. And ended up having to give it all up, and became destitute, lived on the streets, didn't have a house. The last thing he was heard of, he was working on the baggage handling at Gatwick Airport, and unfortunately he died in about 1984, I think. Anyway, Tex Withers, the man, the mystery. Okay, bit of Western swing. This is Spade Cooley and Tex Williams, Oklahoma Stomp. If you don't know what Western swing is a blending of swing band jazz music, like Benny Goodman, things like that, with country music. So you'll have fiddles in there and lap steel guitars, things like that. And Spade Cooley was one of the big names in Western swing. Between him and Bob Wills and his Texas Playboys, they're probably the two best known. In fact, he had a falling out with his promoter. He was at a club in Venice Beach, somewhere like that. Venice Pier? Venice Pier. Anyway, he had a falling out with his promoter, who apparently was the guy who coined the phrase Western swing. He had a falling out, and he was going to be replaced by Bob Wills, and so he said, "Okay, I'll go, but before we go, I want a battle of the bands." And apparently, they had a weekend where there was a battle of the bands. They played all of the weekend, and at the end of it, Spade Cooley here, he crowned himself the king of Western swing, said he won, and his kind of career kind of did continue, but it all ended in the 60s when he was an alcoholic, was having paranoid fantasies. He was having fantasies that his wife May was going to satanic sex parties with Roy Rogers of the Sons of the Pioneers, who was apparently a friend of Spade Cooley's, she eventually left him, and he turned up at the house, the family house, sort of saying, that he wanted her back. When she refused, he beat her to death on the driveway. But first, and this is the nasty bit, he made sure that his daughter, his 12-year-old daughter, was there watching. So it's like something from some kind of Elmore Leonard novel, a sort of Hollywood underbelly. Anyway, so Spade Cooley, he was convicted of her murder, surprisingly, but his mate, Ronald Reagan, remember him, worked behind the scenes to try and get him early parole, which he did, and he was about to be released, and whilst he was doing a gig for, it was like a prison service benefit or something, he went backstage, collapsed, had a heart attack and died. So he was actually never released. So that's Spade Cooley. Again, with the sort of a very similar kind of thing, this is Rex Allen, Mr. Cowboy. He was probably the last of the Hollywood cowboys, singing cowboys, like Gene Autry and Roy Rogers and some of the others. He was the real deal. He was a cowboy. He grew up on a ranch, and in fact his brother was killed by a rattlesnake when he was young. And he first of all took the name what was it? Cactus Tex. Cactus Tex. That's it. But eventually he then took his name Rex Allen.
We are terribly sorry, but it appears there is a technical fault with another fat bearded man talking about records. We will try to resume services as soon as possible, but in the meantime, here is a video of a cat.
But eventually Rex Allen himself would get called up by Hollywood, and he would do a spate of films in the 50s. And he did do a television series as well. But after that, he became famous behind the scenes doing the voiceover for many of the Disney wildlife films. If you listen to him, you might recognise it if you're familiar with those. So this is a lovely album. Again, it's another album on the Stetson label. So I love the Stetson label. Nice cover, really nice cover. There he is on his horse. I think his horse was called Coco. So there we go. A couple more. I don't know what time we're on. I've only got 6 minutes left. Guy Clark, the songwriter. This is Old Friends. He was part of a scene with Townes Van Sant, a lot of other artists at the same time, and like I said, songwriter. Probably famous for LA Freeway and Desperados, Waiting for a Train, that I think Jerry Jeff Walker had hits with. He was one of those people that everybody seemed to do his songs. Johnny Cash, Vince Gill, I think later on did. Kenny Chesney has done his. So yeah, Nancy Griffiths, all kinds of people. And he was a kind of the folkier side of country. He was also a luthier. He made guitars and often performed with guitars that he'd actually made himself. This is a lovely album, actually. It's called Old Friends, and it does bring together people like Emmylou Harris, Roseanne Cash, Rodney Crowell, Vince Gill, who all performed earlier with him. So it's kind of him sort of getting the gang back together, like the Blues Brothers. He sadly died earlier this year in May, which was very sad. It's not been very good for country music. Lost some big names, Guy Clark and Merle Haggard. He was a mentor for a lot of artists in the sort of the late 70s, early 80s. He got Steve Earle his first recording deal. So there you go, Guy Clark, really worth picking out. And finally, here we go. This is Graham Parsons, and this is called Alternate Takes from GP and Grievous Angel. So yeah, not the catchiest of titles. I bought this. This is something I bought at a record record store day. I don't normally do that stuff, and this is actually the most expensive record I have ever bought. I'm not telling you how much it was, but let's just say that you can get it for considerably less on eBay now. Damn you, eBay! So this is Graham Parsons. If you don't know, kind of the godfather of country music, or as he called it, cosmic American music, which was kind of a blending of country, soul, rock and roll, a bit of everything in there. And he hated actually country rock. He called the sort of the work of the Eagles a dry plastic fuck. And who can disagree with that? Anyway, he started off in the 60s with the International Submarine Band, and then into the Byrds, and persuaded them to do Sweetheart of the Rodeo. And after that, he moved off into formed the Flying Burrito Brothers. After a couple of albums, he went solo, discovered Emmylou Harris singing in a folk club, and persuaded her to come and sing backing vocals, and taught her, according to her, how to sing backing vocals, and gave her a love of country music. And released 2 albums, GP, and in 1973 or 72, and Grievous Angel, which was released posthumously in 1974 after he died in 75. In fact, a connection I have with Graham Parsons is he died on the 19th of September 1973, the same day, spookily, that I was born. Maybe I'm some kind of reincarnation, or maybe not. And yeah, these had been released before, I think, on a CD box set, different takes, but it's nice to have this. Ironically, I don't own GP and Grievous Angel on vinyl, so I've got this. I've got the alternate takes. Yeah, it's nice. It's great. I like tracks like Hickory Wind, and Return of Grievous Angel, and She. They're all lovely songs. Look, some cover versions: Streets of Baltimore, Sleepless Nights. Sleepless Nights again. I think the Mekons might have liked Graham Parsons. Anyway, so there we go. That's it. Thank you very much for watching. If you made it this far, if you haven't, you're not here, so I don't care. I swear to you, I won't do another long one again. I'm going to go short, and I'm going to ditch the country for a while and show some other stuff, because I do like other things other than country. Okay, well, thank you very much. Oh, by the way, what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and put a Spotify playlist somewhere on the down there, and if you're interested in any of the stuff, check it out. Can you get Spotify in America? I'm not sure. We can't get Pandora over here. Anyway, so thank you very much. So I've been another fat bearded man talking about records. Bye bye. Damn you, eBay!